What matters to you when it comes to these trade talks? Where do we go to next?
Well, I think, as mentioned, the lack of progress is a concern, and I think the issue now is not only do we have that May 22 deadline in terms of coming up with the tariffs, but also, remember, on March 22nd, Trump instructed Steve Mnuchin from the Treasury Department 60 days to come up with further measures against Chinese investments into the United States, which risks putting another slap on the face for China. China in itself is also hitting a dilemma. We had on Friday the first quarter balance of payments data, which showed a current account deficit. And in addition to that, when we're looking at the CFETS basket, the trade-weighted exchange rate of the renminbi that the PBOC watches quite closely, we've hit the February highs. We've actually got an appreciation of the renminbi against trade-weighted partners as the dollar's getting so strong against emerging markets, which really puts the pressure on China to allow dollar renminbi to go higher because it's experiencing, in some sense, a further tightening of financial conditions, and it has to give some ground, particularly when you look at the current account. China should experiencing a modest current account surplus, not really a deficit at this stage. So again, those numbers tomorrow will be important to look at where we are in the trade cycle for China.
Is it reasonable to assume that they make any sort of headway when it comes to shrinking the trade deficit? I mean, what the U.S. is essentially asking is for China to come out and basically take that deficit and slice it in half. Is that a reasonable expectation to have, at least over the next 5 years?
It's very difficult. I mean, you're talking about squeezing a toothpaste in a tube, because obviously if you do cut with China, those bilateral positions will move to Vietnam, Malaysia, Thailand. We'll just get an adjustment through the supply chain. So, it won't make, it will make, in a certain sense, some adjustment on a headline level, which would be appropriate or would be pleasing to both sides. The other thing I forgot to mention, which is also important, will be how the talks with North Korea go as well, the summit between Trump and Kim Jong-un. So I think and that has been inextricably tied with the relationship over trade. So I think the 200 billion, I wouldn't, cutting that trade deficit by 200 billion, I would take with a large grain of salt, but it's an opening salvo. How much we could reduce it and how that ties in with a deal over North Korea, I think, are the two big moving parts. But again, I think it gets worse before it gets better.